Hi guys, so in this tutorial we're going to be learning how to make this beautiful beginners friendly Kaftan Bubu blouse. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Okay guys, so let's get started. So first I started off by marking my top line, which is 1 inch from the top of my paper, and the reason why I did this is just so I can mark from the edge of my paper. And from the side I'm also coming in by 1 inch, and I'm just doing this just so I can take my measurements from the edge of my paper, and this is going to be my center front. Now on the top line I'm going to mark my neck width, and my neck width for my front is going to be 3 inches. Now from the top line again I'm also going to mark my neck depth, and I'm going to make my neck depth about 7 inches because I wanted my neck depth to be a bit deep. Now after marking the neck width and neck depth, I'm just going to use a straight line and I'm going to connect the 2 points together. Now on my top line, from the center front I'm going to mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2. Now from that point over there I'm going to mark my sleeve length. So I'm marking my sleeve length from this point. You can check where the head of my tape is, so that's where I'm marking the length of my sleeves. So now from the sleeve length mark I'm going to come down about 2 inches, and that is going to serve as my shoulder slope, and I'm going to connect the 2 points together like so. Then connect that 2 inches point I marked downwards all the way to my neck width, and I'm going to be using a straight line for this. Now from that point I'm going to place the head of my tape at that point, and I'm going to mark my sleeve width. That is how wide I want the sleeve to be. So you're just going to take that measurement and you're going to mark it down like so. You're going to divide that measurement by 2. So after marking how wide I want my sleeve to be, I went back over here, and from the top line here I'm marking my shoulder to bust measurement, which is also called shoulder to nipple measurement. And on the top line again I'm going to be marking my shoulder to waist measurement. Now for my waistline I'm going to mark my hip depth, which is the waist to hip measurement. Now I'm going to be marking my back pattern with my front, so I came down 1 inch from the top line, and that is going to serve as my back neck depth, and I'm just going to connect that to my front neck width. This is because I am drafting the back and front together. Now on the bust line I'm going to mark my bust measurement divided by 4, then I'm going to add extra 3 inches to that. Doing this is not really necessary. The reason why I do this is just so when I draw the curve I'll know that my measurement is bigger than my actual measurement, so this just serves as a guide. Now on the waistline I'm going to mark that same measurement that I have on my bust line. Then on the hip line I'm going to mark my hip measurement divided by 4, then I'm going to add extra 3 inches to that. Now what I'll do now is that from this point here I'm going to go in by 3 inches. So I went in by about 3 inches. Then I'm going to use my straight ruler and connect the 2 points together, which I'm going to curve in like this. You can see that I'm not really meeting the point. Like I said, that those points I marked on my bust line, waistline just served as a guide for me, so I know that when I'm drawing this curve it's actually bigger than my actual measurement. I'm just going to blend it in like this and draw a curve all the way down. I'll use a curve first, then I'll finish it with a straight line like so. I'll just do this till I reach the hem. Now from the top line, though you can't see it, what I'm doing here is I place my tape at the top line and I'm marking my dress or gown length, how long I want the gown to be. I think mine was about 50 inches or 48 inches, I can't really recall. So on the hem, this is going to be our hem, and what I'm marking is my hip measurement divided by 4. So I marked my hip measurement divided by 4 on the hem, just so that it tapers a little bit down at the hem of the gown. So on the hem line, that is the length of your gown, just mark your hip measurement divided by 4, and that's what I marked there, and I connected. So I just went in a little bit, at the bust line, just so that it can't be too big, because I don't want mine to be so big. So this is just your choice, just do whatever you like. So I'm now using a curve to connect like so. So after doing this, you're just going to go ahead to cut this out and make sure to add your 0.5 inches sewing allowance round. And that is what I did here. As you can see, I have my 0.5 inches all around my pattern, and please don't forget to add hemming allowance before I forget. So now what I'm going to do now is create my facing for the neckline, and I'm going to create my back and front facing in this same pattern. So from the front neck depth, I'm going to come down about 4 inches, and that's how wide I want my front facing to be. And from the neck width, I'm also going to go in by 4 inches, and that is how wide I want my facing to be. Then I'm just going to take a curve, and I'm going to connect those 2 points together. So this is going to be my facing for the front. Now for the back facing, you can see the back neck depth here. Remember that we came down 1 inch for that back neck depth. So I'm going to place my tape, end of my tape there, and I'm also going to make my facing about 4 inches long. And from the neck width, we're going to use the same as the front, and I'm just going to connect like so. You can see where I'm connecting to, because I'm drafting my back and front facing together, just so we can't waste pattern paper. So this is going to be my facing for the back. So now we need to trace out this facing, and what I'm going to do is place a new pattern paper underneath this like so. Okay, then I'm going to trace my back neckline. So this high one here is my back neckline, which I'm tracing. Then I'm going to trace the shoulder till I get to that 4 inches width. Then this is my back facing. You can see that this is where my back facing is. So I'm going to trace that too, just tracing. Okay, so now that I've traced this, I can remove this, then blend. Then this is going to be my back facing, which we're going to be cutting on fold. Now for the front facing, I went ahead to place a pattern paper underneath it again, like you can see me do in this video. Then this is my front neckline. You can see here, this here is my front neckline. If you remember when we drafted it, this is my front neckline. So that's where I'm going to be tracing from. So that's my front neckline, and this is what I have after I traced it. So remember that we didn't have opportunity to add allowance to our front neckline, so I'm going to be doing that right now, just adding 0.5 inches allowance to my front neckline in the facing, and I'm going to cut out like so. Remember, this is going to be cut on fold too, because this is the center front. So now we have made our back and front facing. I can keep this aside. So now I remember that I need to add 0.5 inches allowance to the neckline for the front. So I'm just going to do this directly on my pattern paper. So when we're cutting this out, you understand how I drafted the front and back necklines together. So now that we've done with the pattern drafting, we can go ahead to the sewing tutorial. Okay, so this is the fabric I'm going to be using for this tutorial. It's a tie and dye or whatever they call it. I don't know what they call it, but this is the fabric I'm going to be using. And because of how this fabric is delicate and it moves a lot, that is why I drafted a pattern and didn't cut directly. So my fabric is actually long in length but short in width, so it's not going to be able to take this sleeve length. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this, shorten this sleeve, then join it back, because my fabric is it's not wide enough to accommodate it. So if yours is not wide enough, you can go ahead to do this, but if yours is wide enough, you just leave it be. So I drew a line where I'm going to cut it from and marked my notch points, and you can see I'm taking my scissors and cutting that part out, and I'm going to be joining this back together like so. So what I've done now is I've placed my fabric on fold. Then I got my pattern paper and I placed the center front at the folded end like this. And what I'm going to do first is that I'm going to be cutting my back bodice first before I cut the front. So I'm just going to place that center front at the folded edge. I've gone ahead to also pin it down, and now we can go ahead to cut. So I'm going to be cutting the back first, so you can see I'm following the back neckline, following the shoulders, and I'm just going to cut this out. So now that we've done cutting the back, this is what we have. So I've also gone ahead to cut that other sleeve part. So you can see there, we will need 2 pieces so that you can join it on both sides. So you're just going to make sure to notch the point. That is if you actually did what I did here, but if you didn't, this part is not necessary. But I'm just making notches at those 2 points so that it will help me join it together at both ends of the sleeves. So as you can see, I'm taking the pin off and I have 2 pieces of this, so I'm just going to join it together with the back, just so that I know that, okay, yes, I'm going to be joining this back to the sleeve. So I'll keep this aside, and now let's go ahead to cut the front. So like again, you're going to place your fabric on fold again, then that center front will be at the folded end. So it's just like cutting the back. So now I'm going to cut off my back neckline like this, so that I will know that I'm cutting the front now. So I've removed my back neckline, so it's time to cut the front, and this is how the front neckline is, if you recall when we were drafting the pattern. So I've gone ahead to pin and I've gone ahead to cut out. I also went ahead to cut out that other side of the sleeve, and like I said, you'll be needing 2 pieces of this so that we can be able to join. Like you can see here, I have 2 pieces. So we'll join this, and also make sure to notch so that it will help you when joining. So I'm also going ahead to cut the facings. That part, the facings will be cut on fold. So you just place your fabric on fold, then you can go ahead to cut your facing. Make sure to cut your back and front facing. Even though I couldn't show it in the video, I actually cut my back and my front facing on fold. So now that we can now go ahead to join this part of the sleeve that we chopped off. So I'll just unpin it. Like I said, I had 2 pieces, so I'm just aligning it together. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place right side facing right side. Then I'm going to sew using about 0.25 inches. So I'm just pinning it down like so. Then I'm just going to sew using 0.25 inches just so you can join together. So you're just going to make sure to do this for both sides of the sleeves. Right side facing right side, then you're just going to sew using about 0.25 inches. Make sure to do this for both your front and your back bodies. Okay, I think we can go to the next step now. So as you can see here, I've joined the sleeve. I don't know if you can see the joining. Okay, I guess you can see it. So now we're just going to be joining the front and back bodies together. And what you're going to do is you're going to place right sides facing right sides like so, like just you can see me do in the video. So what I'm just doing is I'm placing right side, and you're going to sew the shoulders using 0.5 inches. Right side facing right side, don't forget, sew the shoulders using 0.5 inches. They are also going to sew the sides using 0.5 inches. So you sew the sides using 0.5 inches. You're just going to sew both sides, the shoulder and the sides here, following that curve at the underarm. You're going to sew using 0.5 inches. So you can see I've gone ahead to pin, and like I said, you're going to sew the shoulders. So I'm going ahead to pin it, and you're just going to sew the shoulder using 0.5 inches, and that's the allowance I added. And you're going to sew the sides using 0.5 inches, then do the same thing for the both sides. I'm just showing you guys so that it can be clear enough. You sew this curve using 0.5 inches all the way to the hem. So I've sewn the sides, and this is what we have. So we're almost done. You can see the joining over there. So I did this for both sides, join the shoulders, and now we can go to the next step. So here I have my facing. And remember, like I said, you're going to cut your facings on fold, both the front and the back. So I'm just unpinning it like this. Then I'll open it up so you can see what I mean by cut on fold, and this is what you're going to have when you cut it on fold. You can see the V over there. So I have my back facing too, which I cut on fold, and the reason why we're cutting the back on fold is because there's no zip, so there's no need to cut. That's why we cut the back on fold, because there's no zipper at the back. So as I open it up like this, we're going to be joining the two shoulders together, right side facing right sides. So you're just going to place right side facing right side. Then you're going to sew the shoulder using 0.5 inches because that's the allowance that was added. So now after sewing the shoulder, this is what I have. Now we can go ahead to use this facing to turn the body's neckline. So this is the neckline, and I'm just going to place the facing, making it face the facing right side of your bodice. So I'm just going to place the right side facing right sides. Then I'm going to make sure that the seams at the shoulders they meet, because that is very necessary. When you're joining things like this, you must always make sure the seams meet. So you can see I've gone ahead to pin my facing all around the neckline. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be sewing this neckline using 0.5 inches, showing the V, following the V curve. So now I'm going ahead to turn the neckline with the facing, and this is what we have. Also make sure to notch, and also make sure to stop stitch and press this neckline. Now for the sleeve, I'm going to be adding cuffs to the sleeve because I want the sleeve to taper. So what you're going to do is that you're going to measure round this arm like this. You're just going to measure round. After measuring around the arm, you're just going to cut a cuff like this, and the length is that round measurement that we measured. So I'm just going to make it clear of how I cut it. So like I said, you're going to measure round, just measure round here, and whatever you get, that's going to be the length. You're just going to add 1 inch of joining allowance. So that's going to be the length plus 1 inch of joining allowance. And at the bottom here, you're going to measure round your wrist measurement. Then you're going to, that's what you're going to get here, plus 1 inch of joining allowance. So you're just going to cut 2 pieces for the 2 sleeves. Then you're also going to cut a lining, and as you can see, I ironed interfacing to my lining piece just so that I can give it the cuff a little bit of strength. So here I have 4 pieces, and I'm going to be joining this to the sleeve. So first, you're just going to join fold the sides in together. And remember that we added 1 inch of sewing allowance, so you're going to use 0.5 inches to sew the sides. So you're just going to do this for all the 4 pieces. Right side facing right side. Always right side facing right side. So now after doing that, this is what I have. So here I have a lining piece and I also have a main piece. And what we're going to do is that we're going to turn the wrist part. As you can see, I'm turning this over to the back, just so that I can get the right sides of my main piece and the right side of my lining together. So I'm going to put in the right side of the main piece like this into the lining, and this will make the right side facing the right sides. Always make sure your seams meet anytime you're doing a joining. So that's what I did. I'm making sure that the seams which I sewed, they meet. So you always make sure the seams meet. Then I'm going to use a pin. Then I'm going to use my pin to just hold it down so it can help me. Then I'm going to sew round using 0.5 inches. Okay, after sewing round and turning, flipping it over, this is what we have. So you're just going to make sure you do this for the other piece. So I sewed the bottom, but I flipped it over. Now I'm going to be joining this cuff to this sleeve part. So just like we did when we're turning the wrist, you're just going to do this, making sure right sides face right sides. I've pinned it down. Then I'm going to use about 0.5 inches to sew round. So you're just going to make sure you do this for both sides of your sleeves, and it's that simple. It's not hard at all. So you're just going to sew this all the way round using 0.5 inches, just like I said. Guys, that's basically it. You can see that I have fixed the cuff, and this is how the cuff looks. And also go ahead to hem the bottom of your garment, and that's all. Thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial, and see you next time.